I apologize for this video being a day late. If you want to complain to someone about it, feel free to email my ISP because they're good people who charge me a lot of money for a lot of not good internet. Now, League of Legends esports is going through some weird stuff at the moment, like a lot of weird stuff. So let's start with a bit of professional misconduct, shall we? On the 28th of September, allegations involving Karmine Corp's assistant LEC coach Apples begun to surface, involving inappropriate professional and sexual behaviour. The first of the professional was involving Jack Spectra, ex-LEC player and current LEC caster. On the 29th, he subtweeted a user RDM who was saying, "Apples leaks everything about our LEC scrims to some girls," to which Jack, I'm not sure if calling him Jack is correct or not because his name's actually Jacob, but we'll roll with it, you know what I'm talking about, replied with his experience involving Apples. Quote, "When I was first starting out in esports, Apples reached out to me and asked what teams I was thinking about joining. Me being naive, I told him both my options. He then went to both of those teams and told them I wouldn't join, so he could bring in his own roster." This is a really dog act, sabotaging a young up-and-comer for personal gain in an already hyper-competitive system. We are not off to a good start for Apples. Following this, another user, Ezor, subtweeted Chloe. Now, we'll get back to Chloe in a second, because contextually the order of this just won't quite make sense to the viewer. But Ezor says she supports what Chloe had said, but that she warned her about issues she had with Apples a year prior. I know that's confusing, but it'll make sense shortly. She also shared these walls of text. The first saying, following assumedly a falling out between the two, she still didn't want to ruin him despite having all the receipts to expose him due to her empathetic nature. She was even going to create a new Twitter to warn other girls about him, calling him a, quote, liar, twisted pervert. The second is threatening to expose him publicly for being manipulative, lying, and predatory. She accuses him of having inappropriate or exploitative interactions with female Karmine Corp fans, citing an example involving Chloe, who again we'll get to. She argues that, as a grown man and coach, he knowingly abuses his position of power over girls, offering tickets and using his influence to pressure them into sexual situations. And the third is kinda just a reiteration of all this, what she warned in the second message, but she says things like, quote, "You'll have some power over her. You know that she will always act different because she sees you as the coach of the team she likes. You know that proposing to offer her tickets to events will alter her decisions. You know what you'll be like in her eyes, and how it'll make her say yes to shit, and that's f***ing twisted to use that, especially for sexual shit, because you and I know damn well how big of a f***ing pervert you are. It's disgusting." Now getting back to Chloe, the other KC fan Ezor spoke about. Chloe tweeted all of this. It won't really make sense due to the translation being sketchy, but she's essentially saying that women had known about Apple's alleged misconduct for years, describing him as a big creep who repeatedly messaged female fans. She suggested the issue was ignored until it became public, and shared a screenshot showing she had confronted him privately before others began speaking out online. But why did all this misconduct take so long to come to surface? As Ezor said earlier, Apples had threatened suicide if she went public, which made her fear speaking out, which is an example of emotional abuse. On your screen are just a few of the pair's exchanges on Instagram, where he talks about hanging himself. And also, because of the nature of KC fans, who both girls were very well aware of, and the culture surrounding the team, there was also a fear of backlash or dismissal, which further discouraged them from speaking. After the allegations surfaced, French streamer Sardoche dismissed them. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And he accused the women of seeking attention following KC's loss. In the clip on your screen, he explains that KC fans are looking for a scapegoat for the LEC defeat. He also accuses the women who leaked their DMs of seeking buzz, choosing the moment when he was the most down. Now, following all this sexual stuff, more on the professional side. Apples was also said to have been involved with bet fixing, which links back to his scrim leaking tendencies. Heavy Brows, the founder of Z10, had this to say about Apples. I would summarize all this because it's a lot, but basically every detail here is important or relevant. He says he was frustrated when learning Apples had joined KC because, quote, people didn't know what they were getting themselves into. In Season 8 of Ultraliga 2022 Summer Playoffs, he recounts this. We debut our first LAN event versus Argo Rogue. We had chances, but in reality we were facing some of the greatest players on the scene, including Promiscu. At the studio, we find out Knight had missed his flight and was late for matches, a player of the main roster. so Blummigan was subbing in, their coach, which drastically altered their chances of winning and they ended up 3-0ing them. Quote, that kinda tells you the story of how the betting bookies were handling the odds on our games, because we were the extreme underdogs. Few moments before entering the studio, I got a message that was soon after deleted from Apple's, asking if the rumors about Knight were true, and if I could confirm before each game if Knight still didn't show up, so he can earn money by betting on us. He says there were 2 messages from memory. The first one saying, just focus, you guys got this. Knight isn't showing up, it's free. To which I replied, okay. The other one came later with the request that I keep him updated on the status of the roster. It's important to mention that the broadcast was late 20 minutes obviously, and since it was live, even though we offered to wait longer for him to arrive, the production pushed us to start Game 1 and Game 2 without Argo's mid laner. The second message was, react to my message with the thumbs up just to let me know if Knight showed up. You don't have to tell me anything or write anything. Soon after he deleted those messages, he said, tell me if you saw, insinuating if he saw the messages. So obviously Apples knew he was doing something really wrong. Heavybrow says, later next season, he reached out and asked if he could be a coach/manager because he had heard leaks that we were importing Korean players and stacking a roster for 2023. I kept ghosting him because I strongly stand to not work with people that match fix/gamble on their own matches. As it can be seen in the second screenshot, because of the ghosting, he asked why I have a grudge against him. So with basically a Nami alt worth of different kinds of allegations, Casey shortly responded with this tweet, basically saying they had been made aware of actions from a certain employee and were conducting an internal investigation. He was promptly suspended pending the investigation and then later released as of just a couple of days ago. And then most recently, Apples responded on Twitter, saying he acknowledged causing harm to Karmine Corp and accepted his dismissal, admitting he wrongly shared internal information and engaged in private conversations with fans, which he now recognizes as inappropriate despite being consensual and not illegal. He denied any intent to harm, expressed regret for his mistakes, apologized, and thanked the club and fans for the past 2 years. But this wasn't the only controversy Karmine Corp had been involved in recently. As of August, KC's mid Vladi had played around 2,500 league games across solo queue, matches, and scrims, which is around 10 hours per day for the entire year. Fans were worried the workload was causing burnout and hurting his performance, which applied more pressure as Niski was his substitute. Broadcaster Laurie had also noted on her stream that she'd heard Vladi had been struggling with his mental health, but Yike messaged her and said he is looking after him. Good guy, Yike. Following this, negative remarks made in his Twitch chat toward him from aforementioned aggrieved KC fans, Vladi said, quote, I am playing for KC, but the majority of the fanbase of this org is by far the worst I have ever seen. I would appreciate if the single-digit IQ KC fans shut their mouth and kept their opinions to themselves. And following this, KC founder Komedo told Vladi to apologize and step away from socials for recovery. But if you think the LEC controversies only involve Karmine Corp, just look at the video timeline below you. There is a lot more to come, and while you're checking that, maybe check to see if that little subscribe button is clicked on. It lets me know you enjoy these types of videos that help you keep up to date, and I just want to say thank you in advance if you do. I really appreciate it. Now, a few days ago, Sheep Esports reported this. Riot to launch new 2026 winter format with 10 LEC teams, Los Ratones, and their EMEA Masters Summer Champion. This article essentially says that Riot is planning major LEC format changes for 2026. The winter split will be replaced by a new Kickoff Tournament featuring all 10 LEC teams plus 2 ERL squads, the year's top performing EMEA Masters team and the 2025 Summer Champions. Los Ratones, dominant in the ERL, have already secured a spot. The tournament winner will qualify for the First Stand, the first international event of the year in Brazil, meaning an ERL team could potentially reach a global stage. The LEC spring and summer splits will continue with the usual 10 teams, but this experiment adds ERL integration at Tier 1. Riot considered ERL teams competing directly for world spots, but LEC orgs rejected the idea. But there is further ERL/LEC crossover expected in the future. So as is relevant to this whole subject, earlier this year, Caedrel addressed Los Ratones LEC rumors on his stream, as I covered in this video. For an LEC slot, it is projected to cost between 20 and 30 million euro, which is maybe even more. I'm going off that number because in this recap, Caedrel mentioned 20 million. And not only that, Schalke sold their slot for 30 million only a few years ago. Misfits also sold theirs for roughly the same, in the ballpark of 40 to 50 million USD. This is an insane amount of money, and not even is it money that is guaranteed to pull a return if it's spent. As we've seen over the years, particularly in the LCS, teams would come and go almost by the season. And while yes, that competition is inferior to the LEC based on metric, it's still League of Legends esports. But why do slots cost so much? To put it into perspective, 30 million euro could buy you an AW139 military helicopter, or maybe 10 Lamborghini Veneno Roadsters, or maybe just a League of Legends team. But Los Ratones has a very unique situation. Most people pay to be in tier 1 for the exposure it'll bring, but with Los Ratones, it's kind of the other way around. No matter where they go, the exposure follows. Caedrel and Los Ratones' numbers are that of a tier 1 league, if not more. So now that you're up to date, yes, tens of millions of euro is an insane amount of money. So the LEC was almost certainly off the table for League's new favorite and dominating team, Los Ratones, despite rinsing every competition they'd been a part of. But that still doesn't mean every other LEC team hadn't already spent that insane amount of money to get into the LEC. Wherein lies the next controversy. As Yamato addresses on his stream, the existing LEC teams didn't agree to this happening, because bringing teams in through means other than buy-in dilutes the existing LEC slots that were paid a lot of money and resources for. He also speaks on, while this may seem like a pretty superficial decision by Riot, it has heavy underlying repercussions for teams that have invested a lot into the LEC based on the trust that the competition would act in their best interest. If you want to watch his full video, which is around 30 minutes, it'll be in the description, but I highly recommend. He brings up a lot of good and valid points from both Riot and the community's perspective.
I assumed that the LEC teams agreed to this partnership. It turns out eBay made commentary pointing to Team Heretics spending 35 million, pointing to KC spending 27 million, and they have their spot diluted, so he made commentary on it. Yamato went on stream and said there wasn't even a single person who agreed with that idea, they just fucked us. So basically the LEC teams didn't agree to this upcoming change where in the winter split, Los Ratones is included, nobody, which is cooked. I assumed, the thing is, in Caedrel's reaction video, he also said and assumed that the LEC teams agreed. If the LEC says they have a partnership with teams and they go over their head to change the league and to dilute their position, this is not a partnership. It is basically LEC, judge, jury, and executioner. They just told all the LEC teams, we decide everything. You can go f yourself. The format that got leaked today is a softer version of what they are planning to do. Their original plan was even crazier, which brings us back to the Sheep Esports article. And they said the idea of having ERL teams compete directly with LEC teams for Worlds qualification was also discussed, but declined by LEC organizations who argued it would devalue their guaranteed spots. However, further integration can be expected in the future. The funny thing about this now is that now we know the source. LEC was directly leaking to Sheep Esports, because this version of this news article is the one that the LEC wanted to push out. Now we know who leaked it. And obviously, they did this interview with Max Schmidt right after. It's not a coincidence that this was a coordinated push. The funniest part about this, right? The idea of having ERL teams compete directly with LEC teams for Worlds qualification was also discussed. The funny thing is, the first person who brought up the fact Riot is going over the heads of the teams is somebody in Sheep Esports. It just seems like Sheep Esports just wants to maintain the relationship that they got this information first. That's just how it seems like. But back to the issue at hand. Why can't every org boycott the LEC, Yamato was asked. The orgs would die even for KC. It's one of our main asses. We cannot easily boycott them. This is what I like to call esports piracy. Sometimes players get screwed out of their salary because they have no recourse. They can't afford lawyers. They have to have an international lawyer to sue a team that is in that country and the other country and the other country. It's impossible. And it just would bankrupt you and there's nothing to pursue. The LEC teams are in the same boat. All of their sponsorships are reliant on the LEC franchise spot and the advertisement that that brings. If they boycott, they will go under because they wouldn't fulfill their obligations to their sponsors. And if they don't fulfill their obligations to their sponsors, they are cooked. Riot would live on. The teams obviously rely on this way more. And this was built on trust. This was built on trust that LEC is going to act in the best interests of these teams. And they took a big dump on that trust with this decision. Let's not lie to ourselves. The new format was completely made to let Los Ratones play in the LEC. They are involving Los Ratones because of course, their popularity. No other reason. But I do think that people shouldn't be angry at Caedrel. Caedrel is going to get so much shit. Blame LEC and Riot. People that are claiming that he lied, I think he just jumped to a logical conclusion.
And Yamato wasn't wrong. Caedrel is copying a lot of shit, and I have to say at no fault of his own. As he addresses in this clip, it's out of his hands. If Riot wants Los Ratones in the LEC, an advantageous situation for his organization, who is he to say no to a $30 million handout?
The French casters are shitting on you. Really? What did I do? What did they say? How dare he make a team, win everything in the league, and then Riot says, we'll make a rule to invite the team that wins everything to join the LEC in a Winter Cup that has nothing to do with LEC and not give them a spot instead of giving them a promotion relegation spot, or opening up a guest slot like other regions have, we'll invite them to a Winter Cup. Fuck Caedrel! Is this the definition of punish for a winning lane? It's like, win a lot, get invited to something, say yes, your fault. Okay, my bad. My bad! They said you didn't want to pull out checks to buy your way in. Ah, okay. Okay, so let's frame this in a way where Caedrel secretly has all this money that he can buy a spot for 20 million in, but he didn't want to, so he's manipulated everyone to invite himself to a tournament. How dare he? Like, what is going on? What is going on? What the fuck is this dog shit? Are these the same people who are saying, we want more ERL competition, more viewership for ERL, and more eyes on ERL, and more investment in the system? Oh, but we're gonna invite ERL teams to a very tame tournament in Winter Split, and not promote relegate and not guest slot. We get invited, and now it's our fault because we didn't buy our way in. People are coming to me with the solution. They're like, yeah, but Caedrel, what about all these teams that paid millions to get in? What? How does that involve me? What the fuck do you want from me to do about that? What? Caedrel now needs to like refund them and then invite this team, and then Caedrel needs to move that. Like, what the fuck do you think?
I also wanted to add this on from Yamato. I spoke about the unique financial spot Los Ratones find themselves in my other video we just showed, but here Yamato reiterates it, giving further reason why the team find themselves in a once-off predicament.
Riot make Caedrel pay for the sport. Why is he getting special treatment? He would never, bro, like he would never pay for that sport. The only version of that is like Red Bull Ratones. Keep in mind, Los Ratones is getting LEC level viewership, and their YouTube numbers are by far the best, and they are spending nothing. Why would they spend 30 million for less even? Now they are streaming their scrims, they're playing competition, their YouTube is popping off, they can get brand deals because they have guarantees from their viewership. Why on earth would they spend 30 mil? Worlds? To get to Worlds, you know how much more you need to spend? Delusion of Los Ratones, for Los Ratones fans, delusion is really important. And the Los Ratones mysticism is also really, really OP. If you want to compete in the LEC and go to Worlds, you don't get to stream your scrims. You need to walk your fucking face off. You lose the soul of what made you insanely popular. Obviously, Caedrel behind a very cool personality, you can make content still, but you're going to lose out on a lot, and that's also expensive. And then these players need salaries then. And then if a player like Reckless, Nemesis, Baus should give up their stream to play, bro, Baus needs a fucking milli contract, brother.
It also needs to be noted that despite Kometo speaking out against the situation, he doesn't actually have anything personally against Caedrel or Los Ratones. As we read on his Twitter, he would have done the same, and frankly, probably any team owner would have. Anyway, this situation is still developing, and as Yamato said, Riot could easily just pull this back because it was a leak and not an official announcement, but I'll be sure to keep you guys updated if they do. As I said before, subscribe to not miss out, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!